I've desperately tried to think of an algae-based pun, but I couldn't think of one, so I think they're just gonna have to grow on me a little. You may be wondering what the hell algae have to do with my usual shtick, which is nothing. They have nothing to do with my usual shtick. However, if you've seen my TikTok lately, you know that I've been writing an archaeology-based science fiction story, and that is where they do come in handy. I kind of needed an excuse for one of the characters to walk around the ship, just to drop in some foreshadowing and exposition, and I wanted him to talk to one of the science teams. I have the science teams on that ship working on different little projects throughout the story, and I still had a submerged planet that I hadn't done anything yet, so I wanted the conversation to center around, like, you know, some water-based stuff, and so my mind quickly went to algae. Now, I wanted the conversation between the character and the scientists to make sense, so I researched about algae a little bit, and it turns out that algae are super fascinating. Oh my god. So yeah, this video is a flimsy excuse to let me infodump about the new things I learned about algae. Before we get into all that, however, you know the drill. If you love all things human, archaeology, history, art, literature, and apparently algae, you are at the right address. So hit that subscribe button and ring that bell so you never miss an episode. And just as a final quick disclaimer before we get into all of this, I am not an algae expert, in case you couldn't tell. I'm an archaeologist. I know fuck nothing about algae. This is just a really, really broad, introductory thing, algae for dummies kind of video, okay? I'll be sure to link all of the sources that I used in the box, the description box below, so that you can go have a look for yourself if you want to know more, okay? Cool, let's go! First of all, what are algae even? Wikipedia classifies them as plants, but it's a little more complex than that. Just like plants, algae do photosynthesize, which means they convert carbon dioxide and water into food, in which oxygen is produced as a byproduct. However, they lack the stems, roots, leaves, or reproductive systems that other plants have, which makes them both morphologically and functionally different from other plants. For the most part, algae are aquatic, which means they live in or around water, and they are arguably one of the most important organisms to have in any body of water. Like I mentioned earlier, they produce oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis, and because there is little to no other plant life in water, they are the primary source of oxygen, which other animals need to survive. They are also at the base of the food chain. All other aquatic animals either eat algae or eat those that do. In short terms, good luck having any sort of life in aquatic biomes if you don't have algae. Another reason one might be hesitant to call them plants is because there are dozens, if not hundreds, of different types of algae, and they can range in size from being literally single-celled microscopic organisms to kelps which can grow to 60 meters in size, which for the Americans among us is like 200 feet. What? And what's even crazier is that from an evolutionary standpoint, some of these species are more closely related to protozoa or fungi than they are to other algae. By the way, protozoa are single-celled organisms and fungi are mushrooms and shit. So, evolutionarily, some algae have more in common with other things entirely than they do with each other. That's how varied their species are. It's not too surprising then that taxonomically, they are kind of their own thing, just like fungi. Taxonomy, for those of you who don't know, is essentially a way of categorizing organisms. It is a detailed, somewhat complex system, but one which assures that you know precisely what organism you're dealing with. It's why humans are also called Homo sapiens. That's our species' taxonomic name. We come from the family Hominidae, just like our predecessors Homo neanderthaliensis, Homo erectus, and Homo habilis. Our species, which separates us from the other Hominidae, is sapiens. The names of each category of a taxonomic classification often says something about the organism it's referring to. It's either referring to where a species was found, like Homo florenziensis, which was found on the island Flores, or to something that makes the species distinct, like Homo erectus, which was the first hominid to stand fully upright. Dogs, wolves, coyotes and the like are called canines because they come from the Canidae family. They are all evolutionarily related and thus placed in the same taxonomic family. A dog's taxonomic name is Canis familiaris, because we tamed them, and a wolf is called Canis lupus, because lupus means wolf in Latin. If you've ever been to a zoo or a museum and seen the Latin name of an animal underneath its common name in your language, you're looking at its taxonomic name. Because algae are kind of their own weird little thing, it can be difficult to categorize them in such a rigid system. Trying to do so has sparked a lot of arguments and debates, especially as we learn more and more about them. But as with all things in science, we do our best with what we have and adapt accordingly as we learn more. For now, there are a few ways to distinguish between different types of algae. The first is between microscopic algae, which are often either single-celled or so small that they cannot be seen with the naked eye, and macroscopic algae, ones that can be seen with the naked eye and are multi-celled. Macroscopic algae have different types of cells which each have different functions, such as anchorage, the ability to stick to surfaces, transport, photosynthesis, or reproduction. Reproduction for algae is achieved through cell division, not sexually or through some type of pollen-based mechanism. As I mentioned earlier, the morphology of algae is super varied. Morphology refers to the physical appearance and characteristics of a thing, and algae can look like all sorts of things. They can be a single cell, or a number of cells that are strung together like a beaded necklace. Some are branched and almost bush-like, and others even look like seaweed. They can have anywhere between 1 and millions of cells. Some have a precise number of cells that they can achieve per colony before they stop growing in number and only keep growing in cell size. They can have all kinds of different colors, and more often than not, different colors mean different species, as each type of algae has a different pigment type. They can grow in different places and develop different characteristics specifically for those places, which brings me to another manner of categorizing algae. Each algae that grows in a different type of place has a different name in order to keep them apart. Like with most other things in science, those names signify something about their growing location. Look, our field of study is complex enough as is. We like to make our lives as easy as possible. In any case, when I talk about algae, the most likely type you're going to be picturing in your mind are the neustonic algae. These are the ones that grow floating on a water surface. You see them a lot in ponds, for example. They can be either macroscopic, those are the ones you can see, or microscopic, which are too small to see with the naked eye. Plankton, from SpongeBob SquarePants, is actually another type of algae, planktonic algae. They grow suspended in water, which means they sort of float around underwater and are always microscopic. If I told you that cryo means to do with extreme cold and philic roughly means to like, then where do you think cryophilic algae thrive? Right, in snow and ice. The same goes for thermophilic algae, which live in hot springs. Edaphic algae grow on or in soil, epizoic algae grow on animals like sloths and turtles, and epiphytic algae grow on fungi, land plants, or other algae. Corticolous algae, however, specifically grow on tree bark, so if you find them there, it's a different type of algae altogether. Epilithic algae grow on rocks, but endolithic algae grow in porous rocks or coral, whereas chasmolithic algae grow in chasms or fissures. Finally, endosymbionts are algae that live inside other organisms. See how each of those names precisely reflect what type of algae we're talking about? Fuck man, I love science. Then the next logical question, of course, is whether algae are toxic or poisonous. Most algae are harmless to humans, although some can cause harm indirectly by poisoning the fish we eat. Red tide blooms, which are tons of red algae that are brought closer to the shore by the tides, can release toxic cells which are transported by the wind and can cause health issues when you breathe them in. There are precious few types of algae that can cause direct harm to humans by attacking our tissues, usually causing various diseases. These occurrences are pretty rare though, so for the most part algae are relatively harmless, but certain specific types do have the potential to cause symptoms like skin lesions, memory loss, digestive problems, and disorientations, just to name a couple things. But the slogan of this channel is all things human, so is there a way to link algae in some way back to human life? Yeah, actually, there are lots of ways in which algae play a role in our lives. We eat them, of course. Humans will eat anything under the sun. I should know, I ate anything from glue to random flowers when I was a kid. But certain types of algae are safe for consumption. In certain areas, like East Asian and the Pacific Islands, algae are dried and eaten, but in other places they can be processed or used in preparing other foods. They're also often eaten as parts of a salad or in side dishes. There are certain types of ancient algae that produce oil as a side product of photosynthesis, which are then modified by bacteria. This oil can be harvested and turned into a fuel alternative. As I understand it, there are already a few companies that are growing these algae on purpose as a possible alternative for fossil fuels. Another way you've most certainly interacted with algae is chalk. Chalks for your blackboard can come from fossilized algae, and of course if you've ever had fish, either in a pond in your yard or in an aquarium, you have had algae of some kind in there, as they provide the oxygen for your fish to breathe. In conclusion, algae are super complex and super fascinating. But like I said, this is just a really broad introductionary course into just the whole wide world of algae. There is a whole different type of scientist that is related to the study of algae specifically. That's called philology, if I'm not mistaken. And if you're studying algae, then you are a philologist. So this is a lot more complex and a lot bigger than I could possibly cover in such a short little video. So if you want to learn more about algae, you can do so starting with the sources in the description box, which is the sources I have used for this video specifically. Yes? Awesome! Also check out my TikTok so you can stay updated on this little sci-fi story. I post updates every once in a while when I have a question or when I run into something interesting, so you know how everything is going. That's all I've got for you today, nerds. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time. Bye! You may be wondering what the hell. I had one of the science teams. Wait. If you love all things archaeology related, no. Just like plants, algae are aquatic, which means they live in or around water. I don't like the way I said that, sorry. And what's even crazier is that it is a detailed Jesus. That each have different functions, such as... Holy fuck. Morphology refers to the Jesus. They can have all types of different colors, and more often than not, colors mean different shit. Plankton from SpongeBob's cryo means to cryophilic algae thrive. Oh my god, I can't even speak. Where do you think cryophilic algae thrive? Right! I sounded like Dora. What the fuck? Edaphic algae grow in and epiphytic. Cordicollis? Epilithic algae grow on rocks, but endolithic algae grow in... Epilithic algae grow on rocks, but epilithic algae grow... Jesus Christus. Epilithic algae grow on rocks, but endolithic algae grow in... Bitch. Cool, let's go. Can release toxic cells that are transported by the wind. The wind? A succulent Chinese meal? Chalks for your chalkboard. Chalks for your chalkboard. Chalks for your blackboard can come with fossilized... Chalks from your blackboard... No. Fuck. As they provide the oxygen for your fish to breathe.